The clinking of crystal glasses at La Lumiere stopped instantly. It wasn't the music dying down, it was the silence of pure shock. Sebastian Sterling, the tech mogul who thought he owned the world, stood frozen, his hand gripping the back of his mistress's chair. Across the room, bathed in the soft glow of the chandelier, was the woman he had thrown out onto the street just 6 months ago, his ex-wife Elena. She wasn't broken, she wasn't crying. She was glowing, draped in diamonds and heavily pregnant, and the hand resting protectively on her lower back, it belonged to Julian Thorne, Sebastian's deadliest business rival. What happens when the man who has everything realizes he threw away the only thing that mattered? The air inside La Lumiere was always cold, maintained at a crisp temperature to preserve the vintage wines and the impeccably applied makeup of Manhattan's elite. But for Sebastian Sterling, the temperature dropped 20 degrees the moment he looked up from his menu. "Seb, darling, are you listening to me?" Chloe purred, running a manicured fingernail down the sleeve of his bespoke Armani suit. "I said the penthouse on Fifth Avenue is perfect. It just needs a little renovation." Sebastian blinked, the fog of his own arrogance momentarily clearing. He looked at Chloe, beautiful, yes, young undeniably. But looking at her now with her demanding pout and eyes that calculated the cost of everything they touched, he felt a strange hollowness. 6 months ago she was the exciting distraction. Now she felt like an expensive obligation. "We can talk about the apartment later," Sebastian muttered, reaching for his wine glass. He needed a drink. The merger with Sterling Tech was stalling. His board was getting restless, and he had a headache that pulsated behind his left eye. He took a sip of the Pinot Noir, his eyes wandering lazily across the dining room. He saw the usual suspects, a senator arguing with his aide, a washed-up actress laughing too loudly, and... The glass slipped from his fingers. It didn't shatter. He caught it just in time, splashing dark red wine onto the pristine white tablecloth. "Sebastian, you clumsy idiot," Chloe hissed, grabbing a napkin. "That splash almost hit my Birkin." He didn't hear her. He couldn't hear anything over the roaring of blood in his ears. There, walking through the mahogany double doors, was a vision in emerald green. The dress was silk floor-length and cut to hug every curve. But it was the curve of her stomach that stopped Sebastian's heart. It was Elena, his Elena, the woman who for 5 years had worn second-hand sweaters so he could buy server space for his startup. The woman who had packed his lunch every day, who had rubbed his back when the stress made him vomit, who had believed in him when he was nothing. And the woman he had ruthlessly served divorce papers to exactly 185 days ago because she didn't fit his new image. She looked radiant. Her skin, once pale from stress and long hours working as a nurse to support him, was now luminous. Her hair, usually tied back in a messy bun, cascaded in rich chestnut waves over her shoulders. She looked like a queen. But it was the man escorting her that made Sebastian's stomach turn into lead. Julian Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Enterprises, the shark of Wall Street. The man who had tried to buy Sebastian's company 3 times, and the man Sebastian hated more than anyone on earth. Julian looked down at Elena with an expression Sebastian had never seen on the ruthless businessman's face, absolute tender adoration. Julian said something and Elena laughed. It was a clear bell-like sound that Sebastian hadn't heard in years. Then Julian's hand moved. He placed it gently on the small of Elena's back, guiding her forward, and as she turned, the profile of her baby bump became undeniable. She was at least 6 months along. Sebastian did the math instantly. 6 months. They had divorced 6 months ago. "Who are you staring at?" Chloe demanded, turning around in her chair. Her eyes narrowed. "Wait, is that your dowdy ex-wife?" Sebastian couldn't speak. He felt like he was drowning on dry land. He stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor, drawing the attention of half the restaurant. Elena looked up at the sound. Her eyes met his. He expected to see hate. He expected to see tears. He expected her to shrink away, just like she did that final night in their cold, empty kitchen. Instead, Elena's gaze was cool, detached, and utterly indifferent. She looked at him the way one looks at a stranger on the subway. Then her eyes shifted to Chloe and a small, pitying smile played on her lips. She turned back to Julian, whispered something, and they continued walking toward the VIP section. The table Sebastian had been told was booked for months. "Sit down," Chloe hissed, tugging his sleeve. "You're embarrassing me." "She's pregnant," Sebastian whispered, his voice cracking. "So," Chloe rolled her eyes, picking up her menu. "Looks like she moved on fast. Or maybe she was cheating on you. Isn't that what you told me? That she was cold and distant?" Sebastian stared at the back of Julian Thorne's head. Cold and distant, no. Elena had been warm. She had been home. He had been the cold one. "I need to talk to her," Sebastian said, taking a step forward. "You will do no such thing," Chloe snapped. "Sebastian, if you walk over there, we are done. Do you hear me?" Sebastian looked down at Chloe. For the first time he saw the ugliness beneath the makeup. "Then we're done," he said flatly. He left Chloe gaping like a fish at the table, clutching her menu, and began the long walk across the restaurant floor. Every step felt heavy with the weight of the past. As Sebastian navigated through the tables, ignoring the whispers of the Manhattan elite, his mind was violently pulled back to the night he ended it. Flashback, 6 months ago. The rain had been relentless that night. It battered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse Sebastian had just bought without Elena's name on the deed. Elena was standing in the middle of the living room holding a spatula. She had made lasagna, his favorite. The smell of melted cheese and basil filled the air, contrasting sharply with the cold steel and glass of the modern apartment. "We need to talk," Sebastian had said, tossing his briefcase onto the $20,000 Italian leather sofa. He didn't even look at her. "I have good news," Elena had said softly. Her eyes were shining with a secret light. She had a small gift box in her pocket, her hand clutching it tightly. "Can it wait until after dinner?" "No," Sebastian snapped. He walked over to the minibar and poured himself a scotch. "It can't wait. I spoke to the PR team today." "The PR team?" Elena frowned. "About the charity gala." "About us, Elena. About me." He turned to face her, taking a sip of the amber liquid. "Look, Sterling Tech is going public next month. The IPO is going to make us billionaires. I'm going to be on the cover of Forbes." "I know," she smiled, though it was faltering. "I'm so proud of you, Seb. We worked so hard for this." "We," Sebastian scoffed. The sound was cruel. "I wrote the code, Elena. I pitched to the investors. I stayed up for 3 days straight fixing the server bugs." "And I paid the rent," Elena whispered, her voice trembling. "I paid for the electricity that ran your servers. I bought your food. I drove you to the meetings because we couldn't afford a taxi." "That's just support. That's what wives do." He dismissed her, waving his hand. "But things are different now. My image. It needs to be sharp, powerful, modern." He looked her up and down. She was wearing a faded cardigan and jeans. She looked comfortable. She looked like the past. "And I don't fit that image," she stated. It wasn't a question. "You're a nurse, Elena. You're simple. You like staying in and watching movies. I need someone who can network, someone who shines at galas, someone like—" He trailed off, but they both knew he meant Chloe, the daughter of a real estate tycoon who had been flirting with him for months. "I see," Elena said. She took a deep breath. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the lasagna. She just looked incredibly tired. "So this is it, 5 years, and you're firing me like an employee?" "I've drawn up a generous settlement," Sebastian said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "The condo in Jersey. A monthly stipend for 2 years. It's more than fair." Elena looked at the envelope on the table. Then she reached into her pocket, her fingers brushing against the small box she had been holding, the box that contained a positive pregnancy test. She looked at Sebastian. Really looked at him. She saw the ambition that had eaten away the boy she loved. She saw a stranger in a suit. If she told him now, he would think it was a trap. He would think she was using the baby to anchor him to keep her claws in his money. He would look at their child as a PR problem or a financial liability. She tightened her grip on the box, crushing the cardboard slightly, and left it in her pocket. "Keep the condo," she said, her voice turning to steel. "And keep your money. Elena, be reasonable." Sebastian sighed, annoyed that she wasn't making this easy. "You have nowhere to go." "I'll figure it out," she said. She untied her apron and folded it neatly on the counter. "I always do." She walked to the door, grabbing only her purse and coat. "Elena," he called out, feeling a sudden strange pang of panic. "Where are you going in this rain?" She opened the door. The wind howled, blowing rain into the pristine hallway. "Away from you, Sebastian," she said. "Far away from you." The door clicked shut. Sebastian had stood there, annoyed that the floor was now wet. He drank his scotch, ate the lasagna she had made, and told himself he had done the right thing. He was free. End of flashback. Back in the restaurant, Sebastian was 10 feet away from their table. His heart hammered against his ribs. He hadn't been free. He had been a fool. He reached their table just as the waiter was pouring sparkling water. "Elena," Sebastian said. His voice sounded ragged, stripped of its usual authority. The table went silent. Julian Thorne slowly put down his wine glass. He didn't stand up. He didn't need to. His presence alone was commanding enough to suck the air out of the room. He looked at Sebastian with eyes like chips of blue ice. "Sterling," Julian said, his voice a low rumble. "I don't recall inviting you to join us." Sebastian ignored him. He was focused entirely on Elena. He looked at her face, then down to the swell of her belly and back up to her eyes. "Is it?" Sebastian pointed a shaking finger at her stomach. "Is it mine?" Elena picked up her linen napkin and dabbed her mouth gracefully. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Hello, Sebastian," she said. Her voice was different, deeper, more confident. "It's been a long time." "Answer me," he demanded, leaning in, his hands gripping the edge of their table. "You're 6 months along. We were together 6 months ago. Is that my child?" Julian shifted, his muscles tensing beneath his suit, ready to strike, but Elena placed a calming hand on his arm. "It's ironic," Elena said softly, a dark amusement dancing in her eyes. 6 months ago you told me I was simple. You told me I didn't fit your future. You offered me a settlement to leave quietly. I made a mistake," Sebastian choked out. "Elena, I didn't know." "You didn't ask," she countered sharply. "You were too busy talking about your IPO and your image." "But if it's mine," Sebastian pleaded, "I have rights. I'm the father." Elena laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "A father. You aren't even a husband, Sebastian. You gave that up for a penthouse view." She leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "And regarding the baby," she whispered, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You did the math, Sebastian, but you forgot one thing. Biology doesn't lie, but neither do secrets." "What does that mean?" Sebastian asked, confused. "It means," Julian interjected, his voice dripping with disdain, "that you should go back to your table, Sterling. Your little mistress looks like she's about to have a tantrum, and my fiancé and I are trying to enjoy our engagement dinner." Sebastian froze. Fiancé. He looked at Elena's left hand. There, glittering under the restaurant lights, was a canary-yellow diamond the size of a quail's egg. It was unique, tasteful, and worth more than Sebastian's entire car collection. "You're marrying him," Sebastian whispered. "He's the enemy, Elena." "He's a man," Elena corrected. "A real man. One who didn't need me to change to love me. One who picked me up off the street in the rain when you threw me out." Sebastian felt the room spinning. He looked at Julian, the rival who had everything he wanted and now had the woman he realized he needed. "I won't let you take my child," Sebastian hissed, desperation clawing at his throat. Julian stood up then. He towered over Sebastian, a wall of pure power. "Careful, Sebastian," Julian said softly. "You're playing a game you don't understand, and unlike the stock market, you can't rig this one. Go back to your table," Elena said, her voice final, "before you lose more than just your dignity tonight." Sebastian stood there paralyzed as the waiters swarmed in to refill their glasses, effectively building a wall between him and the couple. He turned around defeated to see Chloe standing right behind him. Her arms crossed, her face twisted in fury. "Fiancé!" Chloe screeched. "You just humiliated me for a woman who is engaged to Julian Thorne. Do you know who his lawyers are? You just started a war, Sebastian." Sebastian looked at the closed doors of the VIP section. A war. No. This wasn't a war. This was a slaughter. And he had just walked willingly onto the killing floor. The narrative shifts back to that fateful night 6 months ago, the hour after the door clicked shut on Sebastian's penthouse. The rain in New York City doesn't wash things clean. It just makes the grime slicker. Elena walked without a destination, her canvas sneakers soaked through within minutes. She clutched her purse to her chest, shielding the small crushed box inside as if it were a fragile bird. She had no umbrella. She had no plan. She had $40 in cash and a credit card she knew Sebastian would cancel by morning. She walked until her legs burned, ending up near Central Park, shivering violently under the awning of a closed luxury hotel. She slumped against the cold stone wall, sliding down until she hit the pavement. The grief didn't hit her in waves. It was a tsunami. She buried her face in her knees and let out a sob that was lost to the thunder. "It's a poor night for stargazing." The deep voice cut through the rain. Elena looked up, squinting against the glare of headlights. A sleek black Maybach had pulled up to the curb, its rear window rolled down. A man was watching her. Even in the dim light, he was imposing, sharp jawline, dark hair swept back, and eyes that seemed to see right through her wet coat. It was Julian Thorne. Elena froze. She knew him, of course. She had seen him on the covers of the magazines Sebastian left on the coffee table. She had seen him across the room at the few galas Sebastian allowed her to attend, usually standing alone watching the room like a predator. Sebastian called him the Vulture. "Mr. Thorne," Elena whispered, her teeth chattering. "You're Sebastian Sterling's wife," Julian stated. It wasn't a question. "Elena, isn't it? Ex-wife," she corrected, a fresh tear tracking through the rain on her cheek. "As of an hour ago." Julian didn't look surprised. He didn't look pitying either. He looked thoughtful. He opened the car door from the inside and shifted over. "Get in," he commanded. "I can't," Elena stammered. "I'm soaking wet. I'll ruin the leather." "Leather can be replaced," Julian said, his voice dropping an octave. "You, however, look like you're about to catch pneumonia. Get in." Maybe it was the cold, or maybe it was the fact that she had nowhere else to go. But Elena obeyed. The interior of the car was warm and smelled of expensive cologne and old paper. Julian handed her a thick wool blanket from the seat pocket. "Where to?" he asked. "I don't know," Elena admitted, wrapping the blanket tight. "A motel. Anything cheap." Julian tapped on the privacy glass partition. "Home Alfred." As the car glided into traffic, Julian poured a small amount of brandy into a crystal glass and handed it to her. "Drink. It'll stop the shaking." Elena took a tiny sip. The heat bloomed in her chest. "Why are you helping me?" "You hate Sebastian." "I despise Sebastian," Julian corrected smoothly. "There is a difference. Hate implies emotion. Despising him is just a matter of taste. He's arrogant, reckless, and apparently blind." He looked at her, then his gaze dropping to her hand, which was still instinctively protecting her lower stomach. Julian was a man who made billions by noticing details others missed. "You're protecting something," he observed softly. Elena stiffened. "You're pregnant," Julian said. Elena looked at him terrified. "How?" "A woman who just lost her husband cries for her past. You're crying for your future," Julian said enigmatically. "Does he know?" "I tried to tell him," Elena whispered. "He didn't want to hear it. He wants a new image. A baby. A baby doesn't fit the brand." A dark shadow passed over Julian's face. His jaw tightened. For a moment the cool businessman vanished, replaced by a man who looked ready to burn a city to the ground. "He threw out his pregnant wife in a storm," Julian murmured more to himself than her. He looked out the window at the passing city lights. "Sebastian Sterling is a fool, and tonight he just made the biggest mistake of his life." He turned back to Elena. "You won't be going to a motel, Elena." "I can't accept your charity," she protested weaky. "It's not charity," Julian said, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that took her breath away. "It's an investment. Sebastian thinks you are a liability. I have a feeling you are his greatest asset, and I happen to be in the market for assets." He extended a hand to her. It was warm, large, and steady. "Come with me, Elena. Let's show Sebastian exactly what happens when he throws away a diamond because he wanted a piece of glass." Sebastian Sterling couldn't focus. The boardroom of Sterling Tech was filled with 20 of his top executives. They were talking about Q3 projections, server loads, and the Asian market expansion. But all Sebastian could hear was the sound of Julian Thorne's voice saying, "My fiancé." "Sir!" Sebastian snapped his head up. His VP of Operations, Marcus, was looking at him expectantly. "The Thorne acquisition," Marcus repeated nervously. "Julian Thorne has just announced a press conference for noon today. Rumor is he's launching a new medical tech division that directly competes with our upcoming HealthLink app." "He can't," Sebastian scoffed, spinning a pen in his fingers. "He doesn't have the infrastructure. Thorne Enterprises is oil and real estate. He knows nothing about medical tech." "Apparently." Marcus hesitated, sliding a tablet across the long glass table. "He has a new consultant, someone who knows the medical field inside out, someone who reorganized his entire chaotic charity division in 3 months and turned it into a profitable venture." Sebastian looked at the tablet. It was a photo taken by paparazzi outside Thorne Tower. It showed Julian walking into the building. Next to him, wearing a sharp navy blue blazer and holding a tablet, was Elena. She didn't look like a nurse anymore. She looked like a CEO. "She's working for him." Sebastian slammed his hand on the table. "That's a conflict of interest. She knows our proprietary data." "Actually, sir," the company lawyer, a weary man named David, spoke up. "She doesn't. You never let her in the office. You never discussed business with her because you said she, quote, wouldn't understand it. She hasn't signed a single NDA." The room went silent. Sebastian felt the blood drain from his face. "Turn on the TV," Sebastian ordered. The press conference. The massive screen on the wall flickered to life. It was CNN. The banner at the bottom read, "Thorne Enterprises announces revolutionary partnership." Julian stood at the podium looking immaculate, but he stepped aside quickly. "I'd like to introduce the director of our new Genesis initiative," Julian said, his voice swelling with pride. "The woman who pointed out that technology without compassion is useless. My partner, Elena." Elena stepped up to the microphone. The camera flashes were blinding, but she didn't flinch. She placed a hand on her baby bump, now very visible in her fitted dress, and smiled. "For years," Elena began, her voice steady and clear, "I watched the tech industry try to replace doctors with algorithms. They forgot the human element. At Genesis, we aren't trying to replace care. We are empowering it." She spoke for 10 minutes. She was brilliant. She was articulate. She used medical terminology. Sebastian didn't even know she knew, weaving it with business strategy. Sebastian stared at the screen. Who was this woman? This was the woman who made him lasagna. The woman he thought only cared about reality TV. "She's amazing," one of the junior executives whispered before catching Sebastian's glare and shutting up. Then came the Q&A. A reporter from the front row shouted, "Ms. Elena!" "There are rumors about your past marriage to Sebastian Sterling. Is this new venture a form of revenge?" Elena laughed. It was light and airy. "Revenge numb. Sebastian Sterling belongs to my past. I am building a future, and as any mother knows," she rubbed her belly gently, "the future is the only thing that matters." "Is Mr. Thorne the father?" another reporter shouted. The boardroom held its breath. Sebastian leaned forward, his nose almost touching the screen. Elena looked at Julian, who was standing just off to the side, watching her with that same intense adoration Sebastian had seen at the restaurant. "Mr. Thorne," Elena said carefully, "is the man who saved us. He is the father this child will know. Biology is a detail. Love is a choice. And Julian chose us when others walked away." Sebastian grabbed the remote and killed the TV. The screen went black, but Elena's words hung in the air like smoke. Biology is a detail. "She didn't deny it," Sebastian whispered. "She didn't deny it was mine." He stood up, buttons straining against his chest. "Get my personal lawyer on the phone," Sebastian barked at David. "Not the corporate one, the shark. The one we used for the hostile takeover of Omnicorp." "Sir," David asked, "what are you planning?" "I want a paternity test," Sebastian said, his eyes wild. "Court mandated, immediate. If that baby is a Sterling, it belongs to me. It's my heir." "Sir, the PR fallout." "I don't care about the PR," Sebastian roared. "That is my child, and Julian Thorne is raising it. Do you think I'm going to let my enemy raise my son?" "It might be a daughter," Marcus muttered unhelpfully. "Get the papers ready." Sebastian stormed toward the door. "I'm going to Thorne Tower. I'm going to congratulate the happy couple." He slammed the door so hard the glass walls of the conference room rattled. Sebastian wasn't driven by love. He wasn't even driven by regret yet. He was driven by possession. He had discarded a toy, and now that another kid was playing with it, he wanted it back. But as he marched toward the elevator, he didn't realize that walking into Thorne Tower was exactly what Julian was waiting for. The trap had been set 6 months ago in the rain, and Sebastian was about to step right into it. Thorne Tower was a fortress of black glass and steel piercing the Manhattan skyline like a jagged knife. Sebastian stormed through the lobby, ignoring the startled receptionists and the security guards who scrambled to intercept him. "I'm here to see Thorne," Sebastian bellowed, pushing past a guard. "Tell him Sterling is here." He didn't wait for an answer. He knew where Julian's office was, top floor overlooking the city, a view that looked down on Sebastian's own headquarters. He jammed the elevator button, his reflection in the polished doors showing a man unraveling. His tie was crooked, his hair wild. When the elevator doors slid open, he expected a fight. Instead, he found silence. The executive suite was vast and serene, decorated in warm earth tones that contrasted sharply with the sterile white of Sebastian's office. The secretary, an older woman with glasses, simply pointed to the double oak doors. "They are expecting you, Mr. Sterling." Sebastian faltered for a second. Expecting him? He threw the doors open. It wasn't a boardroom showdown. It looked like a living room. There were plush sofas, a fireplace, and soft jazz playing. Julian was sitting in an armchair reading a file. Elena was on the sofa, her shoes kicked off, feet resting on the coffee table, reviewing blueprints. It was domestic. It was peaceful. It was everything Sebastian had with her before he got greedy. "You have some nerve," Sebastian snarled, shattering the piece. Elena didn't jump. She slowly lowered the blueprints and looked at him. "And you have no manners, Sebastian, but we already knew that." "I want the test," Sebastian spat, marching into the room. "I want a court-mandated DNA test. I know that baby is mine, Elena. The timing aligns perfectly. You can't hide my heir from me." "Heir?" Julian repeated the word, tasting it like spoiled milk. He closed his file and stood up. That's all this is to you, isn't it, legacy? Property. It's my blood, Sebastian yelled. And I have the best lawyers in the city. I will get custody. I can provide for this child better than you ever could, Elena. I can give him schools connections, the Sterling name. Elena stood up then. The movement was slow, heavy. She walked toward Sebastian until she was inches from him. Her eyes were dry, burning with a cold fire. You want to talk about blood, Sebastian? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Let's talk about blood. She reached into a folder on the table and pulled out a medical chart. She slapped it against Sebastian's chest. Read it. Sebastian grabbed the papers. His eyes scanned the medical jargon. Threatened miscarriage, placental abruption, stress-induced hypertension. The night you threw me out, Elena said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. The night I walked in the rain for 40 blocks because you canceled my credit cards before I even left the building. I started bleeding, Sebastian. Sebastian froze. The paper shook in his hands. I collapsed in Julian's car, she continued. He didn't take me to a hotel. He took me to the ER. I spent 3 days in the ICU. The doctor said the stress, the shock, the physical exertion, it almost killed him. She placed a hand on her belly. For 3 days I lay there praying to a God I wasn't sure I believed in anymore, begging to keep this baby. And do you know who held my hand? Do you know who slept in the uncomfortable plastic chair next to my bed? Do you know who sang to my stomach so the baby would know a father's voice? She pointed at Julian. Him. A stranger. While you were in the Hamptons with Chloe celebrating your IPO, Sebastian felt sick. A wave of nausea rolled over him. He remembered that weekend, the champagne, the yacht. He hadn't thought of Elena once. I didn't know, Sebastian whispered. Elena, if you had called... Called? She laughed bitterly. I tried. You blocked my number. Remember, clean break. You told your assistant to tell me. Sebastian looked at Julian. The man wasn't gloating. He looked at Sebastian with profound disgust. You forfeited your rights, Julian said, his voice deep and final. Not legally, perhaps. Your expensive lawyers can argue biology. But morally, you are a ghost to this child Sterling. You are nothing but a donor. I can fix it, Sebastian pleaded, the desperation rising. I can pay for everything now. I can... We don't need your money, Elena cut him off. And neither does the baby. Because Julian didn't just help me, Sebastian. He believed in me. This medical initiative, it was my idea. He funded it. I'm not just his partner, I'm an owner. I'm worth half of what you are now, entirely on my own merit. Sebastian looked at her, powerful, wealthy, loved, and pregnant with his child that another man had saved. I won't give up, Sebastian said, though the words felt hollow even to him. I'll take you to court. Go ahead. Julian stepped forward, shielding Elena. But before you call your lawyers, you might want to call your broker. What? Sebastian blinked, confused by the sudden shift. Check your phone, Sebastian, Julian said, checking his heavy gold watch. The market closed 10 minutes ago. Sebastian fumbled for his phone. His notification screen was full. Missed calls from Marcus. Missed calls from the board of directors. Alerts from the Wall Street Journal. He unlocked the screen and opened his stock app. Sterling Tech, STR, 45%. What did you do? Sebastian gasped, looking up at Julian. My stock. It's crashing. I didn't do anything illegal, Julian said calmly, walking over to pour a drink. I simply released a report. What report? A due diligence report. Julian smiled. Remember when I tried to buy your company 3 times? You thought I was just hungry for power. I was actually conducting research. I found the flaws in your server architecture. The security patches you skipped to save money and meet your IPO deadline. The user data you were selling without consent to boost your quarterly revenue. Sebastian's face went white. Those were his deepest secrets. The shortcuts he took to become a billionaire fast. You can't prove that, Sebastian stammered. I don't have to. Julian shrugged. I just have to ask the questions publicly. The market does the rest. Panic is a powerful thing, Sebastian. You destroyed my company, Sebastian shouted, because of her. No, Julian corrected. I destroyed your company because you are a bad businessman. You prioritize image over substance. You prioritize profit over people. What you did to Elena was just the symptom of a rot that goes all the way to the core of your character. The board is calling an emergency meeting. Sebastian read a text message, his hands shaking violently. They're talking about a vote of no confidence. They want to remove me as CEO. It gets worse, Elena said softly. She didn't look happy about his destruction. She just looked resigned. Check who bought the dump. The dump? When the stock tanked an hour ago, Elena explained, there was a massive sell-off. Everyone panicked. But one holding company was buying every share that hit the market. Sebastian looked at the volume metrics. Archangel Holdings. Who is Archangel Holdings? Sebastian whispered. It's a shell company, Julian said, taking a sip of his bourbon. Owned by the Genesis Trust. He walked over to Elena and kissed her forehead. Which is owned by Elena. The silence that followed was deafening. Sebastian looked at Elena. She owned him. Owned. She literally owned him. She had used the settlement money, the money she refused, and the salary from her new position combined with Julian's backing to buy the ruins of his empire. You... Sebastian couldn't breathe. You're going to fire me. No, Elena said. She walked back to her desk and sat down, looking every inch the CEO he had pretended to be. Firing you would be too easy. And honestly, the tech is good, Sebastian. It just needs ethical management. She picked up a pen. I'm keeping you on. As Chief Technical Officer. You're a great coder, Sebastian. You're a genius with software. You're just a terrible leader. You'll report to Marcus. And Marcus will report to me. I will never work for you, Sebastian yelled. I'll quit. I'll start over. You have a non-compete clause in your own contract, Julian reminded him. And with the SEC investigation that's about to start regarding those data leaks, nobody will touch you. You'll be lucky to stay out of prison. Elena is offering you a lifeline, a salary, a way to pay for that expensive penthouse and the mistress who is probably packing her bags as we speak. Sebastian slumped against the doorframe. He was defeated, completely, utterly dismantled. His phone buzzed again. A text from Chloe. Saw the news. Stock crashed. My dad says you're toxic. Don't come by tonight. I'm going to Cabo with friends. We need space. Sebastian let the phone drop to the carpet. Why? Sebastian asked, looking at Elena. After everything, why give me a job? Why not just crush me? Elena looked down at her stomach. Because one day, she said softly, this child will ask who his father is, and I don't want to tell him his father is a destitute criminal. I want to tell him his father is a brilliant coder who works for his mother. She looked up, her eyes clear. I'm not doing it for you, Sebastian. I'm doing it so my child doesn't have to be ashamed of where half his DNA came from. Julian walked to the door and held it open. Get out, Sebastian, Julian said. Report to Marcus at 9:00 a.m. Monday. Don't be late, and fix your tie. You represent Elena's company now. Sebastian walked out of the office. The walk to the elevator felt miles long. He was a billionaire when he woke up this morning. Now he was an employee. He was a father who had no rights. He was a husband who had no wife. As the elevator doors closed, cutting off the view of Julian's hand resting protectively on Elena's shoulder, Sebastian finally cried. 3 months later. The fluorescent lights of the Sterling Genesis server room hummed with a monotonous electric buzz, a sound that used to make Sebastian feel powerful. Now it just gave him a headache. It was 8:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. The sprawling office floor was mostly empty, save for the cleaning crew and Sebastian. He sat in a cubicle that was undeniably nice, but a cubicle nonetheless. His corner office, the one with the panoramic view of the Hudson, now belonged to the new VP of Marketing. Sebastian typed a line of code, deleted it, and typed it again. He was tired. Not the exhilarating exhaustion of closing a billion-dollar deal, but the deep, marrow-seeping fatigue of a man living a life that didn't fit him anymore. His suit was off the rack. His penthouse was gone, replaced by a sensible two-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn that smelled faintly of the previous tenant's cat. "Still here, Sterling?" Sebastian didn't look up. He knew the voice. It was Marcus, his former subordinate, now his boss. "Just finishing the patch for the Asian servers," Sebastian muttered. The latency was unacceptable. "Good," Marcus said, pausing by the desk. He hesitated, shifting his weight. "Look, Sebastian, you should probably go. I'm almost done." "No," Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I mean, you should go to Mount Sinai. I just got an email from the executive assistant. Elena went into labor 2 hours ago." Sebastian's fingers froze over the keyboard. The cursor blinked rhythmically, a mocking heartbeat on the screen. "She didn't call me," Sebastian whispered. "Why would she?" Marcus asked, not unkindly. "Go. If you hurry, you might be there." Sebastian grabbed his jacket. He didn't run. He didn't feel he had the right to run, but he walked fast, ignoring the security guard who asked him to sign out. The waiting room at Mount Sinai was a purgatory of beige walls and old magazines. Sebastian had been there for 4 hours. He wasn't allowed in the delivery room. The nurse had looked at him with polite confusion when he identified himself as the father, checking her clipboard before saying, "I'm sorry, Mr. Sterling. The patient has requested only her partner be present. You can wait here." Her partner. Julian. Sebastian sat in a hard plastic chair, staring at a scuff mark on the linoleum floor. Every time the double doors swung open, his heart slammed against his ribs. He watched other families, a young man pacing nervously with flowers, a grandmother knitting a yellow blanket, a group of friends laughing. He was entirely alone. He thought about the last 6 months. He thought about the legal fees that had drained his offshore accounts. He thought about Chloe, who had sent him a bill for her wasted time before vanishing into the socialite ether. He thought about the code he wrote every day, brilliant, flawless code that was making the company millions money that ultimately went into Julian and Elena's pockets. He was a machine again, a cog, exactly what he had treated Elena like. "Sebastian." The voice broke his trance. He looked up to see Julian Thorne standing in the doorway. The billionaire looked wrecked. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, his tie was gone, and his usually immaculate hair was disheveled. There was a smear of something, maybe sanitizer, maybe sweat on his cheek, but his eyes were alight with a terrifying, beautiful intensity. Sebastian stood up, his legs stiff. "Is she—" "She's resting," Julian said. His voice was hoarse. It was difficult. The blood pressure issues came back, but the doctors were incredible. "And the baby?" Sebastian asked the question, catching in his throat like a fishhook. Julian's face softened, the hard lines of the businessman melting away to reveal something profoundly human. "He's perfect." Sebastian let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his lungs for months. "A boy." Julian nodded. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, Sebastian, Elena doesn't want visitors. She's exhausted, and frankly, she doesn't want the stress." "I have a right." Sebastian started, the old reflex of entitlement kicking in. "You have no rights here tonight." Julian cut him off, his voice steel. "Not in this hospital. This isn't a boardroom. You can't negotiate your way into that room." Sebastian slumped. Please, I need to see him. Just for a minute. I won't speak. I won't upset her. I just need to know he's real. Julian studied him. He looked at Sebastian's frayed cuffs, the dark circles under his eyes, the defeat in his posture. He didn't see a rival anymore. He saw a ruin. 5 minutes, Julian said finally. And if you say one word that upsets her, I will have security throw you out before you finish the sentence. The room was dim lit only by the soft glow of the monitors and a small lamp in the corner. The air smelled of lavender and something metallic. Elena was lying in the bed propped up by pillows. She looked pale, her hair plastered to her forehead, but she was smiling down at the bundle in her arms. Sebastian felt like an intruder in a temple. He walked softly, afraid his shoes would squeak. Elena, he whispered. She looked up. Her eyes were glassy with exhaustion, but clear. There was no hate in them, just a vast, impassable distance. Hello, Sebastian, she said softly. He moved to the side of the bed. He looked down. The baby was wrapped tightly in a hospital blanket with little blue ducks on it. He was tiny. His face was red and scrunchy, his eyes squeezed shut against the world. He had a tuft of dark, thick hair. Sebastian's heart shattered. It was his nose. It was his chin. The biology was undeniable. He was looking at a miniature version of himself, a restart button, a second chance at life. He looks like a sterling. Sebastian choked out tears, instantly blurring his vision. He has my grandfather's brow. He has his own brow, Elena corrected gently, shifting the baby so he faced her. He's his own person. Can I hold him? Sebastian asked. His hands were shaking. Elena hesitated. She looked at Julian, who was standing by the door, watching like a sentinel. Julian gave a barely perceptible nod. Support his head, Elena said, passing the bundle over. Sebastian took the baby. He was heavier than he looked, a solid, warm weight. The smell hit him then, that primal, milky, newborn scent that bypasses logic and goes straight to the soul. The baby stirred. He opened his eyes. They were dark, unfocused, swimming with the confusion of being alive. He looked up at Sebastian. Hi, Sebastian whispered, a tear dropping onto the blue blanket. Hi there. I'm your dad. The baby frowned. His little face crumpled. A low, mewling cry started in his chest, rising quickly to a wail. He squirmed, his tiny fist punching against Sebastian's chest. He was uncomfortable. He felt the tension in Sebastian's arms, the foreign anxiety. He's crying. Sebastian panicked, rocking him stiffly. Shh, shh, stop crying. The crying got louder. The baby turned red, screaming now. Give him to me, Julian said. He didn't wait. He crossed the room in 2 strides and took the baby from Sebastian's awkward grip. The transition was instant. Julian held the baby against his chest, one large hand splayed over the infant's back, the other cradling his head. He began a slow, rhythmic bounce. It's okay, Leo. I've got you. I've got you, Julian rumbled. His deep voice seemed to vibrate through the room. The baby's screams turned to whimpers and then to silence. He nuzzled his face into Julian's shirt, smelling the familiar scent of the man who had sung to him through the womb for 6 months. Sebastian stood there, his arms empty, cold air hitting the spot where the warmth had been. Leo. Sebastian asked the name, tasting like ash. You named him Leo. Leo Julian Thorne, Elena said. Her voice was firm. Sebastian felt the room spin. Thorne, Elena, you can't be serious. He's my son. You can't give him his name. I gave him the name of his father, Elena said, her voice rising slightly. Biology provided the blueprint, Sebastian. But Julian built the house. Julian sat with me through the hypertension scares. Julian rubbed my feet when they were swollen. Julian loves him. She looked at Sebastian with a pity that was worse than anger. You were busy protecting your stock price. You made your choice. You wanted a legacy. You have it. The code for the new interface is excellent. Marcus tells me you did a great job. That is your legacy. I can change, Sebastian pleaded, looking at the sleeping baby in Julian's arms. I'm not the CEO anymore. I'm just a guy. I can come on weekends. I can teach him baseball. Leo doesn't need a weekend visitor, Julian said quietly. He needs stability. And frankly, Sebastian, we don't trust you. Not with his heart. Julian walked over to the bed and sat on the edge, placing a protective arm around Elena. The three of them, Elena, Julian, and Leo, formed a closed circle. A complete circuit of love and trust. Sebastian was standing outside of it. I think you should go, Elena said. We need to sleep. But go, Sebastian, Julian commanded. It wasn't a shout. It was the voice of a patriarch protecting his family. Sebastian looked at them one last time. He wanted to scream. He wanted to sue. He wanted to throw money at the problem until it went away. But he had no money to throw, and even if he did, he finally realized that this was the one thing he couldn't buy. He turned around and walked out. The elevator ride down to the lobby took 40 seconds. It felt like 40 years. Sebastian walked out of the hospital doors into the cool New York night. The city was alive. Sirens wailed, taxis honked, people laughed on the sidewalk. The world hadn't stopped just because his had ended. He hailed a cab. Where to, buddy? The driver asked, eyeing Sebastian's rumpled appearance. Sebastian opened his mouth to say, home. But where was that? The apartment in Brooklyn was just a place where he slept. The office was just a place where he worked. Just drive, Sebastian said, leaning his head back against the greasy vinyl seat. Drive north. As the taxi merged into the traffic, Sebastian pulled out his phone. He opened his photo gallery. It was empty of family. No photos of holidays, no selfies with a wife, no ultrasound pictures. Just screenshots of stock tickers, photos of whiteboards covered in code, and a picture of his Ferrari which he had sold last week. He locked the phone and stared out the window at the passing lights of the city he used to think he owned. He was the best coder in the world. He was a millionaire. He was a genius. And as the tears finally spilled over, hot and silent, Sebastian Sterling realized the brutal truth of his balance sheet. He had maximized his profits. He had optimized his workflow, and he had successfully completed the greatest transaction of his life. He had traded everything that mattered for a pile of paper that kept him warm at night, but would never love him back. He was the poorest man in New York. And that is the tragic reality of Sebastian Sterling. He spent his whole life calculating value in stocks, assets, and public image. He didn't realize until he was standing in that hospital room that the most valuable currency in the world isn't Bitcoin or gold, it's presence. Sebastian thought he could buy his way back into a family he destroyed, but he learned the hard way that while biology makes you a parent, only love, sacrifice, and showing up makes you a father. He built an empire of glass, but he shattered the foundation of his own happiness. Now I have a question for you, and I want you to be honest in the comments below. Do you think Elena was too harsh? Should she have given Sebastian a chance to be in Leo's life? Or did he lose that right the moment he chose his reputation over his pregnant wife? I read every comment, so let me know what you think. If this story touched your heart, or if you just love seeing karma do its work, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next drama. Thanks for watching. Take care of your loved ones, and I'll see you in the next video.